I am very, very tired. So, a few years ago, I went down to a place called Cromford Mills for the first time. And I went there to look at some models that people were showing. And when I say models, I mean sort of scratch-built type models of various Jerry Anderson vehicles and all that sort of good stuff. And in the intervening time, it appears that that's now grown into a sort of Comic-Con type event, as they're now frequently called in the UK. So over the past couple of days, I've been down in Derbyshire that way, and there's another place where I've frequented in the past down there, which is called the Vintage Toy Exchange. And that's in a place called Matlock. But Matlock and Cromford Mills are virtually next door to each other. So I killed two birds with one stone. I went to Vintage Toy Exchange on one day, and today I've just driven back from Cromford Mills. And I have given over my Babylon 5 model to a very talented chap called Richard Ashton. And he is going to have a look at it for me and look about, sort of constructing it and painting it in an appropriate fashion. And it's quite funny because when he saw the size that it isn't, he said basically he's not going to be putting lighting in it, which I'm perfectly happy with because that was entirely up to him from my point of view. So no problem with that. But the other place that I found, I wasn't really planning to find because I'd never heard of it before. It's called Red Brick Retro, and the place that I was staying in was called Worksworth, and it's not a place I've found before, and I literally fell upon it by virtue of the fact that it was the only place where I could stay the Saturday night at short notice. That's the only place in the local area that had any availability for the Saturday night, which I needed. So I actually ended up staying the Friday and the Saturday because that was the availability, and I thought I'm just going to push myself, go down the Friday night, then I'll have Saturday to look around a bit more, go to Retro Toy Exchange and so on. So did that. And in this store, little sort of corner place, not massive, 2 floors, lots of music on the lower floor, more sort of bric-a-bracy type stuff on the top floor, but also books. And I wasn't looking for them, but I came across these. And these are very, very old books by Nicholas Fisk. Now, I don't know if you know Nicholas Fisk at all as an author, but this book is very, very close to my heart. This is a science fiction book, as you can see, called Starstormers, that Nicholas Fisk wrote, and it was one of a series. This is the first one. There were 5 in the series. And it's remarkably sophisticated, mature science fiction for children, ostensibly, but actually it's not, it's one of those good stories in that it's not written down to children, if that makes sense. So I have the Starstormers series still in my collection, quite faded spines now, but I still have them. I've also got Wheelie in the Stars and Space Hostages, but as I suspected when I spotted these, I don't have Grinny and I don't have Trillions. I think I've read them from a school library. Certainly Trillions I think I've read at some point. But I think at some point it might be a nice thing to do a video on because, I think some of these books, they just sort of quietly fade into obscurity because obviously they're not current now. Nicholas Fisk has passed on, I believe. So I would definitely like to look at them again and maybe reread them again. I think I did start rereading Starstormers at one point, but then I stopped. But I remember being impressed in it. I remember it being quite dark. I think that's probably what led me to look into more serious science fiction in many respects, because it was quite a dark book for children. So I'm going to add that to my ever increasing list of potential topics. Also in Red Brick Retro, I found not this, but you might recall that I showed you this when I was looking at the Robotech Valkyrie. Now, this is a classic US comic. This is its standard size, as against what we used to get, which was a standard A4 size. And as you can see, the size difference is not inconsiderable. And I show you this because there was a time when Marvel UK decided that it would try publishing a couple of titles in that format. And I have long since got rid of mine, but bizarrely, in this shop, and it was literally last thing I looked at today before I left to come home, I noticed that in addition to the thing I knew was there were also these lurking in a little shelf that was not in my direct line of sight at all, and something just spoke to me and made me look down. So here we have the Marvel UK, Dragon's Claws, and Death's Head. Now, as I say, I used to have the full series of both of these. I now have a collected graphic novel of both of these, but I couldn't not pick them up again just to show you, really, as much as anything else, and for me to have a look at it. And immediately you get great stuff like this, like an advert for Slipstream on the back of this particular comic. But this was, a Marvel UK attempt, and you can see, I imagine you can see there, that's got the UK price listed at the top of the price list, which is a dead giveaway for it being a UK title. And this is also artwork by my favourite artist, which is Jeff Senior. And the readers of Transformers magazine comic will be familiar with Jeff Senior's work, because he also did a lot of other Marvel UK stuff at that time. But Dragon's Claws, I think, was pretty much in entirety done by him. So for me, it was one of my must-have books at that point in time, because I wasn't going to miss out on his artwork. And again, it wasn't sort of 2000 AD dark, but it was quite mature stuff. And of course, this chap, you all know that I also have a bit of a thing for, Death's Head. Not always drawn by Jeff Senior, and indeed this one isn't, because you can immediately see that isn't the same style. But nevertheless, this is, again, Marvel UK, and it's a development of a character who was introduced in the Transformers Marvel UK universe. So Marvel actually owned the rights to him outright, rather than it being a Hasbro-related rights ownership. So again, to randomly find single issues of both of those titles, clearly I was supposed to find that shop. Even more so when it comes to this. And again, not something I was looking for. This is the first issue of the Transformers comic from the UK. And one of the strange things about it is it features Soundwave having a go at Optimus Prime. That virtually never happened in the comics, ever. It was always Megatron versus Optimus Prime. So quite why they went for Soundwave, I have no idea. Now, there's a poster mentioned on here, and I have no idea whether or not the poster is actually still in here. So what I am going to do in due course is have a look at this compared with this, because as you can see, the style changed quite significantly. I think originally this was fortnightly and it became weekly. So I think the style may have changed when it went weekly. But this is what the fortnightly version looked like. And it's just funny because I went through a phase where I collected first issues of runs just on a sort of just because basis. But ironically, this is a comic I never owned. I do not remember having the very first Transformers comic, because it probably took me a few weeks to realise that it was happening. So by the time I realised, this was already off the shelves. So I'm hoping it's in fairly sort of decent condition. You probably saw what price it was when before I took the sticker off. But it's just one of those things where I think I'm going to quite enjoy having a look at that. Because that will take me properly right back, and it will feature a lot of the original toy version artwork of the Transformers as well, because they evolved over time, but initially obviously they had to stick very, very close to the toy artwork. So that was a completely unexpected series of purchases. which I just hadn't been planning on at all, but just complete coincidence, just by virtue of where I ended up staying for the weekend. Just, one of those little things in life. So I thought it would be rude not to on that basis. And I also picked up from Vintage Toy Exchange. That's their information there if you want to have a quick look. But you can use the Google to find them. So I picked up this. Now, I'll do a separate video on it probably, because I don't know what its official designation is. I know it's an Imperial shuttle, and this is an 80s sort of classic kind of one figure shuttle, rather than being one of the ones that we see in Return of the Jedi. But it's got some nice play features. So you just bring the wings up, and you can flip the wings down, and bring the wings back up again. You don't actually have to touch the wings to do it. So that's nice. But this is a great little thing, because the way the wings are configured, it can be a Battlestar Galactica Viper, it can be whatever you want it to be, basically. You can just pretend it's whatever you want it to be. It's any given spaceship. But this one's quite nice and complete. You often see these in various states of disrepair, and I've never been able to sort of pick one up on eBay at speed before bidding, goes a bit ridiculous for them. So to be able to just grab one, I thought, yeah, I'm just gonna pull the trigger on that. And completely other end of the spectrum, I got this. Now, it's a little Mickey Mouse Matchbox toy. Now, when I saw it, I immediately thought that I remembered it. But I then thought, did they used to come in Easter eggs? Now, I know that's a completely random thing, and I don't know whether this is a thing all over the world, but in Britain, we often get things included with our chocolate Easter eggs. So you get the chocolate Easter egg, and then you get a little gift, which sometimes these days is just another chocolate bar. But in the past, we used to get little toys with them separately. And I wonder if this was once a toy, because I remember having more than one of these. And I can't imagine that when I was little, I set out to buy more than one of the same thing. Yeah, that wasn't really my style. But if they repeated it in Easter eggs over more than 1 year, I could have ended up with more than one of them. So if you can confirm or deny that theory, please do. Otherwise, I'll have to do some research. But yeah, that was my only other pickup from the Vintage Toy Exchange. Lots of interesting stuff in there. I bought a Thunderbird 3 from there before, rather my son did actually, technically speaking. And obviously the stock's always changing. I'll mention this now, although I'm going to do another video review of sort of what was in, what was about the store basically once I hadn't got some more time. But one lovely thing that happened whilst I was in the store was that a lady and her husband, I assume, came into the store and explained that they'd been up in her mum's loft, and out came a Stingray Marineville, which I've got, which I chuckled at, and a rather battered Stingray, and also a sort of a Doctor Who Dalek in a box, and the box was really sort of, it was very, very faded, but it was a box for it, and it was from, I think it was a 1965 Earth Invasion film, so presumably it was a Dalek of that era. Now, I didn't actually see the Dalek, but it's always sort of fascinating to see these things that people are actually sort of bringing in that are still around in people's lofts even now. So that could have been sat there for sort of best part of 60 years. So it's remarkable what can turn back up again. So there will be a couple more videos coming off the back of these purchases and my sort of general look around, and the Cromford Mills Comic Con. So keep an eye open for those. But for now, cheers.